Hey friends, my name is Jake. Welcome to Canadian Cutting Edge. This is a video in my Canadian Cutting Edge University series. Well, this one's not really a university level video, whatever that means, This is a very, very introductory level, although there's stuff here that even people that have been using knives for a long time could learn from. I know some YouTubers, maybe even myself, who sometimes break these rules to our own peril, and I've seen many people break a lot of these rules. Before I get started though, let me rephrase. They're not really all rules. Some of them are fairly black and white. Some of them have more nuance, and I won't have time to cover all that nuance because I want to go through this fairly quickly in the hopes that people will watch the whole thing right to the very end, because the last one is especially important for people that use folding knives. And that's pretty mostly people that watch these videos, I think, or watch my channel. And that's the one that a lot of people break, that last rule. So let's get started. Number one, inspect your knives regularly. If the blade is loose, floppy side to side, if the lock mechanism, disengages too easily, if it opens too easily, if the pocket clip, has damage to it, and, that might mean you just lose the knife more easily, but whatever. If there's damage on it, make sure you take note of it, fix it if you can, and if you can't, make adjustments to how you use that knife or how you carry that knife. That's number one. Number two, store your knife in a safe condition when it's not in use. One of the big ones here is, if it's a folding knife, don't store it in an open position. You've got a cutting edge there that's easy to cut. And you're just a meat bag, just like everybody else around you. It's easy to cut you. And if it's a fixed blade, store it in the sheath. If it doesn't have a sheath, store it in a way that's safe. That includes in between use. Let's say you're going camping. Close that knife when you put it down, especially if you got kids around. But even just yourself, you might be cutting something, you put the knife down, and then you go to pick it up to use it, and you've grabbed more of the blade than the handle, and you cut yourself. Those kinds of things happen a lot. So put it back in the sheath, close it up, whatever. Yeah, it's going to add an extra half a second, maybe even up to 5 seconds. That's a big number. It might add 5 seconds to the task that you're doing every time you have to pick it up. Your hands are worth it, because if you cut yourself badly, that's going to use up more than all the 5 seconds that you've spent doing it the right way in your life combined. Trust me. I cut my finger really badly just a number of years ago. That was a little different. That was me doing something stupid, but it happens. Rule number three, keep your knife clean. A clean knife, that is a clean blade, will cut more easily, more consistently, and that means it's less likely to catch on something while you're cutting. It's less likely to slip when you're cutting something. And when it catches and slips, that's when you're more likely to cut yourself or somebody that's nearby. So keep your knife clean. Keep the handle clean, because the same thing, if your handle's slippery, then you've got issues. Take the time to clean. It's really all that is. If you got a carbon steel blade, keep it clean, because you're more likely to get it to rust if you don't. But that's not really a safety issue. Well, it can be. Rust can be a problem, but just keep it clean. Number four, use a knife that is sized appropriately for the task. Hopefully I don't make too much mic sounds right here. If you've got a tiny knife like this, you will not use this to try to whittle something. And if you do, you're kind of silly. But that's really straightforward. We tend not to use knives that are too small for big tasks, but often we use knives that are too big for small tasks. And a big blade waving around is riskier to ourselves and to others if it's bigger than we need it to be. Now, if you're a knife expert and you're trying to do a one knife camping trip, well, you got to use the one knife for everything, so you get a reasonable size knife and you take care of it. Like I said, there's nuance here. In general, choose a knife that's appropriate for the size of the task. Number 5, this one's especially for knife newbies. I got a pocket knife and I opened it. Don't open a folding knife, especially a locking folding knife, unless you already know how to close it. Because you're going to be tempted to keep trying stuff, and you might disengage that lock when you don't think you're disengaging the lock, and it'll start closing if you got pressure on the spine of the blade, and then you're going to hurt yourself. So if you're a knife newbie and you've got a folding knife, especially a locking one, but the other ones as well, just get a little bit of instruction on it, get a little bit of training on it before you open it. I've got a very short video, it's in the list of shorts, on how to close some videos if you're interested in that. I'll link it right up there. So there you go. Keep your fingers as long as you can, boys. Number 6, there you go. Cut towards your chum, not your thumb. Basically, that means cut away from yourself. If I've got, a knife and, I'm trying to cut a piece of wood, I don't want to be, pulling this towards myself. Because if I'm pulling that towards myself, what happens if it's catching on something? Maybe it catches a knot and suddenly it pulls through. I'm cutting myself. So cut away from yourself. I'll talk more about cut towards your chum in just a minute. And number 8, never try to catch a falling knife. I remember just a few summers ago, we were camping with a bunch of family, and I had just sharpened this knife really, really well. And, I was talking with my brother-in-law about it and stuff, and then he was handling it. And his son, who was a teenager at the time, wanted it as well. And we reminded him, it's really, really sharp. And he had the knife, and he dropped it. And he went to catch it while it was falling. Never try to catch a falling knife. If you know you're in a safe area, step back from that falling knife. You don't want to step back into a fire or something, but get away from that thing. Once it's dead on the ground, still not moving, because all knives aren't alive, but you know what I mean. Once it's in a safe spot, then you can pick it up by the handle and start again. But don't try to catch a falling knife. Your instincts are going to tell you to do it. So you got to really fight your instincts on this, especially if you're a knife newbie. Don't try to catch a falling knife. Ouch. Number 9, pass knives safely. If it's a folding knife, have it closed. I'm not going to pass this folding knife while it's open. I will close it and pass it to the person, and then they can grab it. If it's a fixed blade knife, put it in the sheath, lock that sheath if it's got a strap, hand it to the person. Does it take longer? Yes. Deal with it. It's the safe way to do it. Get in the habit of doing that. If it's, say a kitchen knife, how do I hand this? There's no sheath. You put it down. You let the other person pick it up. Now, if you really, really just have to, hand it to somebody. I can't foresee this situation. You hold it by the blade with the cutting edge facing down. You hold it by the blade and you hand it to the person. Remember, the cutting edge is facing towards the ground. Hand it to the person. That way, if they grab it and pull up, your hand's going to be rubbing on the spine of the blade, not that sharp part. So not like this even, although this is fairly safe, it's less safe. Blade down, hand over the spine, give it to the person, and let them take it. Better put it down. Let them pick it up on their own. So that's how you hand knives off. What do we got here? Number 10, sharpen that knife. Get that knife sharpened. If you don't know how to sharpen knives, get it sharpened. A sharp knife is a safer knife because it takes less pressure to cut through stuff. And when you have to add pressure to cut through stuff, it's more likely to suddenly slip and give way on you. And that means it's more dangerous. So sharp knife equals safer knife. Sure, if you do end up getting cut with a sharp knife, it's going to cut deeper. It's going to cut more cleanly though, and your wound is going to heal more easily than one that's sort of ripped through with a dull knife. So make sure that you do that. Number 11. Finally, we get to the last one, and this one's important, and this is the one that, you know, I've got very few knife channels that I watch on a regular basis, but one knife YouTuber, he does reviews, he does other knives as well, knife type videos, just mentioned this in a recent video about locking knives failing while he's using them. That should never happen. It should never happen that a locking knife would fail. First off, you need to be familiar with your knives, make sure the lock is in proper working order, and don't use a knife that isn't. You know, there's things you can do to test that. I'm not going to go over that in this video, but don't use a knife. Let's see, I got a slip joint here. It's a detent slip joint. Don't use any locking knife, even if it's got what the world is saying is the best, most safe lock in the world. Whichever lock that is these days. Even if it's got that, don't put pressure on the spine of a knife. If you must put pressure on the spine of a knife, you're using the wrong knife for the job. It's really that simple. A lot of people might not want to hear that, but that's exactly what you're doing, because locks can fail. If you learn to use a knife properly and never put pressure on the spine of a blade, you're always cutting towards the cutting edge. And I'm being safe. I've got my hands a long ways off. Cut up towards the edge. Don't put pressure down on the spine because it'll close. And some knives, especially the old school back spring slip joint knives, you have to put a lot of pressure, and then suddenly they snap. And if they suddenly snap closed, they snap hard because they got a spring pushing that blade closed. And a lot of people have hurt themselves quite badly with a slip joint knife because they haven't been safe. And they put pressure on that. Or when they're closing the knife, you know, they're holding the knife wrong and they close or whatever. Always stay clear of the path of that cutting edge when you close it, and close it more slowly, and it'll be safer. Fixed blade knives were the first knives out there. So if you have to do a task where you're going to be plunging it into something, use a knife that's got a fair bit of a guard so your hand doesn't slip over. But also the point that this is, if there's going to be pressure possibly on that spine, even just possibly on that spine, use a fixed blade. Use a fixed blade for that task and save yourself the chance of that blade closing on you, because when you're doing that kind of task, cutting and stuff, cutting hard, your hand's over the path where your blade's going to go if it does fail. Locks can and do fail. And a bonus one, and it comes from my saying, cut towards your chum, not your thumb. That's just a saying. That's just like a motto thing. Don't cut towards your chum. Meaning, if somebody's nearby, don't be cutting towards them. Don't be cutting towards yourself. Don't be cutting. Ask them to move a little further away into a safe zone. So you don't want to be cutting your family and friends either. You don't really want to be cutting your enemies either, because that leads to jail time. At least it certainly can. So don't be cutting towards your chum. Don't be cutting towards your thumb. Stay safe out there. Leave your comments down below. Leave your questions. Let me know what you want to. If you've got other suggestions for me to put on this list, maybe I'll make a follow-up list. We'll see. Thanks for liking, sharing, and commenting, and subscribing. And remember, friends, cut towards your chum, not your thumb. Stay safe.